As you know, we use this platform to share stories of resilience. And today I have a very special guest. Hey everybody, it's your host Sally Allen again on the Sally Allen podcast. I want to thank you for being here, and today I have a very motivational, inspirational guest, Missy Severance. Yes, like Severance. And she is a motivational speaker. And I found her on social media. I trolled social media looking for, people to be on my podcast. And I bumped into her. What I didn't know, and she just shared with me just a minute ago, that we actually met at another event last year. I didn't even know that. So I think this was a divine encounter. And I'm so happy to have her on the podcast. Missy Severance, welcome to the Sally Allen podcast.
Thank you. It's so good to see you again, even though it's been a year.
Yes.
I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much. And I know your story goes in many directions and you have different facets of your story. And we said, we're just going to let it flow. So what are you sharing with us today?
Well, today I'm sharing that back in 2011, on Christmas morning, I woke up having survived an attempted suicide.
Wow.
So my story is, of course, like you're saying, there's many facets to it, and it's very, very long. So the part I'd like to share is about how I kind of got up to that point. And there's other parts of it that we can come and talk about later on. But when I was younger, I always struggled with like sadness and not feeling like I was very self-confident or anything. And so growing up, I just had a really difficult time with trying to find something to fill the voids that were in my life, trying to figure out what to do to make myself happy. So I'd always turn to, whether it was friends or, boys or other things. And so I just struggled to figure it out on my own, and not knowing that the way I was feeling was, I thought it was normal for everybody to feel that way. So I never really thought to get help. I just knew I struggled, and I was seeing everybody else and thinking, if I'm going through it, they are too. And how in the world are they so happy and, successful and thriving, and I'm over here struggling? So I started thinking that, I was completely incapable of doing anything, and that made my self-confidence just completely drop. And so when I was in my 20s, I really struggled with that too. And throughout my life, I've had different times where suicidal ideals were actually a part of just my thoughts. And I really I thought that was normal. And so I didn't really act upon them or anything. And I got married to my husband, and we had 4 kids in 2001. And 10 years later, I get to the point in my life where I am going through trying to figure out how to be married and figuring out how to raise 4 children, all 8 years old and under. My youngest at that time was 1.5 years. And it was a struggle. I went through a lot of different things, and it brought me to the point where one morning, one evening, I just was yelling at my kids, and I just was screaming, and I just couldn't do it anymore, and I actually snapped. And so that was Christmas Eve of 2011. And I had been one of those parents before that would yell and, be a little bit more physical and rough with my kids. I kind of had that as a learned behavior, being very angry and not controlling my emotions and not giving myself some grace and taking a break and not taking care of myself. And so that wasn't the first time that I had yelled that Christmas Eve. This was just a pattern of parenting. And a pattern of just reacting, especially with my husband and different things. And so when Christmas Eve came along, my kids were so excited. That's all they can think of is the presents and Santa coming, and in our home we talk about like the Savior and all this stuff, and their excitement. We decorate our entire home. It is like a little wonderland. It's actually pretty fun. We have 11 Christmas trees.
Oh my gosh.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And we have there's just wreaths and garlands everywhere, and with all the smells and the baking, and it's just such a magical time. And my kids, of course, any little kid, even if you don't have anything but a little tree, they still are so excited for Christmas. And that night, they just would not fall asleep. And I was done. And so I went and screamed at them, like extremely let it all out and let it out on them. And I was so angry, I was shaking. And I was yelling at them if they didn't stay in their beds, that Christmas wasn't coming in the morning. And so I finally snapped, and I picked them all up and I spanked all of their bottoms. Like, not just a spanking, it was an anger, And so I threw them all in their beds, all the way down to the 1.5-year-old. I mean, who, 1.5, Yeah. So, and spanking was something that I was very against too, but when you're in that state, it's just too much, and you're not thinking clearly. And that is definitely what happened that night. And I spanked all of their bottoms, and I put them in their beds, and I said, Christmas is now not coming tomorrow because you would not go to sleep and you would not stay in your beds. Mm. And you can see they're crying and they're completely upset by it. And what happens is after, for me at least, and I see this very common in others, is when you go off of a very big rage, most people feel bad about it, and then they go into a very deep, place or dark place. And so for myself, already having depression, which I didn't know, it wasn't diagnosed at the time, I went into my room and I just broke down and started crying. And I instantly knew that had to stop, that I needed to get help and help them, to have something better in their life. And I knew they deserved better. And I remember just crying and feeling like I'm just a horrible parent. I'm not a good wife. I can't even take care of the house because all I do is like lay around. And when I do something, it's this rage of, oh, now I have to clean and now I have to take care of them, or, oh, another kid needs me, or another place to go. And so all of those emotions had just built up inside. And actually at the time, my husband had just lost a job, and his previous employer was suing him for $1.2 million. And it was a frivolous lawsuit, and it got thrown out. But then in the middle of it, we were going through that. And so that night, when I was in my room, I knew that the kids deserved better, that they deserved someone else, because I could not do it. And so I went into my bathroom, where I can't remember who in the house was sick, but there was NyQuil pills and DayQuil pills on the bathroom counter. And I just took a whole bunch of NyQuil pills, and I went to sleep. And I knew that the choice I would make that night to end my life was the right choice. That's how I felt when I took those pills. And so I laid down in my bed, and I went to sleep crying in tears, knowing that this was the right choice because this was what was good for my kids, because I couldn't do it. I was not a fit parent. I had decided I wasn't good enough. And so I just made a choice that night out of just sheer emotion and, not rational thinking. And so I went to sleep, and I don't even remember where my husband was that night, but I do remember him coming in to see me, and I was lying in bed crying. And I don't know if I've imagined that or not, or if that's really what happened. And then I just went to sleep. And I was at peace knowing that that was what was best for my kids. And so, of course, I woke up Christmas morning and I laid there, and it was Christmas morning, and my husband came in to get me, and I was out of it. I kind of think back now, I probably should have gone to the emergency room and gotten checked out because, you know, there's a lot of organs that I had struggled with it actually for almost a whole week for my body. And I don't even know to this day the damage that was done. Everything checks out fine now with testing. But my kids, they were just jumping up and down and so excited, and they were giving me hugs. And that was exactly that point where I knew that my choice the night before failed. And I was so grateful that I was wrong. And I was so grateful that I woke up and that whatever it was, that it didn't just shut my body down and go, because I took a lot. And I'm surprised actually how I functioned that day. I took extra pictures that Christmas because I wanted to remember every moment and remember the feelings of the blessings of being there. And it gave me a completely new look in life. You know, it made me see the little things that day. You know, just to have my kids sitting on my lap, sitting in a mess. My house was a mess. We hosted Christmas every year. And it was, especially by the end of the night, it was trashed. Because we have the 4 kids, and then we have all the family that comes over. And there's presents and boxes and toys and, you know, packaging from toys and food and plates everywhere. And I just sat in it, and I just sat in it all, and I just held my kids because I knew no matter what type of a parent I was at that moment, that my kids deserved me. And they did deserve better than that. I just made the wrong choice that night. So.
Wow. 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 I am lost for words. That's such a powerful story. And there is so much that I'd love to unpack there because it all ties around mental health. And one of the things I've been aggressively studying mental health. And one of the biggest things that I took away from studying mental health is that when you say mental health, there's a stigma around it.
Yes.
But what's going on with you? Because if you have cancer, you're not ashamed of cancer.
Right, exactly.
If you have IBS, you're not ashamed of IBS. But when you say mental health, it's almost like people cringe.
Yes, they do. And in fact, it's 1 in 4 people suffer from some sort of mental health illness.
Yeah.
It's so common, but yet it's so
taboo. Yeah, yeah. And I think it's being reframed, though, as brain health. Because your brain health is just like your heart health, right? You got your brain health and your heart health. So to go back to your story and unpack it a little bit, it seems like growing up, you struggled with brain health.
Oh, yes, completely.
Is it hereditary? Is it, genetics, your family?
Yes, very genetic. So my father actually, his story is a whole another struggle in his life. But he served in the Vietnam War, but he was in Korea. And so he had to see some horrible things. And he suffered from that for years. And when they send home a vet, like they don't, especially then, not now, it's a lot better, but they just send you home. And so my dad had to just figure everything out on his own with all the emotions of it, and he just thrown right back into society as if no big deal, like nothing's different, nobody there because of all the peace and war protests were going on. You know, he was a bad guy because he fought in this war, but he was drafted. Yeah. He did not have a choice. And he did not get help. And so he just went right back into society, had to get a job, had to go to school, you know, and had to just do all of these things with no therapy. And so while he was out there, one of his higher-ups, I don't know what position they were, but they introduced him to something that would help him, like, self-medicate. And he used that until almost the day he died. So from when he came home, I think it was 69 or 70. I can't remember exactly the year that he came home. All the way up until he died 7 years ago, he self-medicated instead of getting treatment. You know, the VA did not, I'm sure they had a program for vets in the past, but what vet in their generation, knowing that they are just supposed to suck it up and deal with it and,
Right.
you know, not talk about it, unless if they're around other vets that understand. And even then, it's hard for them to bring that back up. It was very traumatic, even if it had been decades. And so I grew up with a father that he was amazing with little kids, but not with teenagers at all. He just didn't know what to do with us.
Yeah.
So we were one of those, it's not seen and not heard. So you had to be, you know, when Dad came home, you would let him have his 30 minutes to decompress, and you would be around him just a little bit, but mostly we played outside or played in our room. Mm-hmm. You know, we had to stay away from Dad. And I see that now as a way, when we were older, at least that's how it was. But it was a way for my mom to kind of, she gave us an amazing childhood and things to do and all that. And so, you know, when he, I'm trying to think of his story here without saying too much about him. But
Right.
When he was older, he had some liver issues and he was in the hospital. And they put him on an antidepressant. And he didn't know it, because he was about to have, like, we didn't know if he was going to live. And he did through that one. He died of something else later, a couple of years later. But they put him on an antidepressant. And he was in the hospital for months. And he was the dad I always wanted. Even though he was mad that he was in the hospital. And
Right.
there's life things that you still have to work through.
Right. Right.
That he couldn't deal with in a hospital bed, you know. And all those habits that come with decades of being the same way. But he wasn't bitter anymore about things. He was a lot more, you could see he was happier, and he didn't have his self-medicating things that he needed. And so we're being raised with, and then when we got home, he went right back off of it, you know, because he didn't even know he was on it. And
Right.
so, which is funny enough, right?
Yeah.
I know, I would have been like, I want to know
Yeah,
everything that's going in my
everything,
body.
yeah.
But yeah, they just had to calm him down. Actually, that might have not been the liver issue. That might have been back when he had his heart attack. I'll have to ask my mother which one. But when
Yeah.
they put him on it, you could tell he needed help
Yeah.
and wasn't getting it, you know. And so we grew up with a father like that. And so I picked up very many learned, you know, behaviors
Yeah.
from the way that he talked,
Right.
the way that he talked about work and, you know, just his responses to things at work, the way he parented when we were getting in trouble or when we were doing something that he just didn't like. It wasn't his way. We were doing it our way, and, you know, it had to be different. And so, and then come to find out his father, you know, his father drank a lot too and self-medicated. And so it's just a lot of breaking the chains when it came down to me and breaking that. And realizing that I didn't want to keep doing that. And thankfully, I figured out when they were young enough, and now, you know, I'm super close to all of my kids now.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't get that opportunity and don't realize the power they have within them to change.
Yeah. Generational trauma is real.
Mm-hmm.
And we're wired the way our environment
Yes.
was. And that's what we just take along with us. We carry it along everywhere we go.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, realizing that, it's amazing that you went through your whole life and even got married and had kids before you snapped the way you did.
Yes.
You're very strong and resilient in that sense.
There's a lot of other stories we can go into in a different time that actually
Yeah.
happened to me that actually made right before I got married, up until that Christmas, it was a 10-year slump where something very tragic happened to me right before I got married. And it just really made me believe that I was just not worthy. I wasn't good enough anymore.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. You know, and it took somebody else to point it out to me that I was still good and I was still worthy, and, you know.
But did you find somebody else pointing it out as just a Band-Aid on the problem because it runs so much deeper than you feeling you're not good? There's so much trauma beneath that, right? That's leading up to those thoughts that are bubbling up,
Yes.
right? I feel like we can dig and dig and dig, and there's so much there. But what did you do after you came out of it and you realized you wanted to be better for your kids? And praise God, He has a plan and a purpose for you. And He kept you alive for that reason.
Yes.
And today, I don't believe in coincidence. You're sitting here sharing your story. Someone else will learn from it, right? We always have a testimony that comes out of darkness. But what did you do to help you to get to where you are today?
So after I woke up that Christmas morning, it took a while to kind of really grasp the reality of things, because life's just will keep happening, you know. And so I just kept going through the motions, and I was like, okay, I'm going to be better. I'm going to watch my reactions and try to take more breaks and look at the, you know, look at the brighter side of things and all this stuff that I had heard over the years, you know. And I was going to church this whole time too. So I was, you know, I would pray and really just try to do it. And I think it was April, just a few months later of that same year. Well, I guess the next year, because right after Christmas. And I was so mad again, and I got to a breaking point again, and my emotions got to the almost exact same point I was Christmas Eve with my children. And my husband came home, or somebody came over and something, they watched my kids, and I went and took a shower, and I just started crying. And in that shower, I just felt like that was it. Now I really need to just figure something out, because I felt that I wanted to end my life, but I did not want to do anything about it. So I recognized that day that I needed help somewhere else. And so that is when I actually, I went to my quick care, because I had been on anxiety medicine years before, and it helped. It didn't help a ton, but I went, actually I made an appointment with my doctor, and it was like 2 or 3 months out, right? So I said, I can't wait that long for help. So I went to the quick care, and I talked to them. And by the words that I said, and because I was telling them, you know, I don't trust myself, but I have a good system around me to help me out. I just need some medicine to get me through until my appointment. They sent me to the hospital and put me in a 72-hour mental health lockdown.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what it's called. It's like an L2K or something. I'm going to get the phrase wrong.
It's L2K.
Oh, it is?
L2K.
Wonderful. Okay, good. I wasn't wrong. But yeah, so they put me down, and I instantly knew, like, this is not where I'm supposed to be. And I went through the whole system and the whole process, being transported, doing the whole checking me in, and they put me in a room. And unfortunately, I had to take out my contacts, and I'm super blind. So I couldn't see anybody there. So my senses, like my hearing, was super heightened. And so I remember laying there in that room, waiting to speak for the first time to a psychiatrist, because I came in the night before. And we talked and everything, but I laid there in the bed just thinking, I can't see anything. I can barely read the magazines they give us, because that's all we had. And I was listening to all the other people there. And it hit me. I knew I wasn't alone, but there was some people out there who were in even more desperate need of help, I feel, than I was. And I didn't think that was possible. You know, and there was another lady that I met in there when I went and took a shower, and she had just attempted to a few days before, and she would be in there longer, because when they found her, that automatically puts you in for longer than just 3 days. And her and I talked, and I don't know how it was, but I ended up helping her a lot. And after that, I went and talked to the psychiatrist that was there, and he said, you know, you have suicidal depression. It's not just depression, it's suicidal.
Wow.
And he talked to me about things I'd never heard before in my life. That was like the broken bone in your body. You would go get fixed, you know, that broken body didn't mean I was a bad person. Right. You know, if you think about that with depression or anxiety or all of these things, they don't make you a bad person.
That's right.
And honestly, I truly believe that everybody's good. We just make wrong choices. You know, we all have the capability of being good. Yeah. It's just we get lost and you know, off path.
But you weren't making wrong choices. You just were not. Your brain was sick and needed help. and you didn't
Yes.
know that.
Mm-hmm.
So you were just, it's if your heart is sick, right? And it just gets sicker and sicker if you don't take care of it. And that's what was going
Right.
on with you. But I can so relate to what you're saying because my son and I did our story. We shared a couple of months ago. He had a full on mental breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in the facility also for 3 days because he
Right.
mentioned suicide. And he's telling me exactly the same things you're telling me.
Right.
When he's listening there and saying, oh my gosh, people are worse off than me. And he didn't even know he was sick. And we didn't know he was sick. We knew he was angry all the time and we didn't understand it.
Right.
And everything you were describing to me that you went through with the anger, it was the same thing with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he had to be in there for 3 days. So I can so relate from a perspective of I watched it all and it was so terrifying for us. It was so terrifying. So you got out of there and
So after I was sent out, I was sent home with the right medication. They started me on it immediately when I was there.
yeah.
And I followed up with my primary care, and then later on met with another psychiatrist. Thankfully, that medicine was the right medicine,
Okay.
and
good.
it worked for me. Some people
Good.
do have to go through it a lot more. And I went through therapy, being taught that that illness did not define me,
Yes.
and that it wasn't me. That wasn't my personality. That was just something broken inside of me that needed to be fixed. And I didn't have all the tools to do it. I was trying to do it on my own. My husband and I were trying to figure it out together. And I had gone to therapy before, honestly, like anger management therapy and things. But if you don't get to the root of the problem and get the proper, not just meds, but the proper counseling, and then the proper understanding later on is I'd been to church for over a decade, at least at that point. And you start to understand how loved you really are and your value and your worth. And it changes your perspective on you as a person. And it's something that for me, I have to remind myself of that daily. Because it's very easy to go in and say unkind things to yourself and to not give yourself some grace or to get busy with your schedule. And I was very good at doing that. So I had to break that habit,
Yeah. I want you to go back something you said that was so powerful and just, look at the audience and tell them what you felt that you were learning some things for the first time about yourself. I want you to repeat that. Those things you were learning about yourself that there was something in you that was broken, that you weren't a bad person, the things that were happening. Can you go back and just tell them that in 3 points?
Yes, there's a lot. There's so much to it, so I could say a whole lot. But I thought that I was not good enough. I thought that I was broken. I thought that everything I was doing was just wrong, and I couldn't figure out the right choice. No matter what I did, it was always incorrect, and that's how I felt. And what I learned is that our choices shouldn't have to define us. The things that happen in our life shouldn't have to define us. That we're all making mistakes every single day, all the time. Whether it's something we're just not doing that's right, or whether it is actually like probably a bad choice, 100%, like noticeable to others. Yeah. But what I learned from talking with the counselor is that I am such a worthy and divine being. I'm a creature of God. I have the potential to become something greater. And it took a long time for me to see that in myself, because I really had to understand the simplicity of, for me, it was for the Savior's love. And thankfully I have an amazing husband that is a prime example of that every day.
Yeah.
He's so loving and he's so forgiving. And anytime I make a mistake, I would just go over and just hug him and say, I'm sorry. And he would just instantly forgive me. Right. And I'm like, I don't deserve you. But I wasn't, and he would do the same, and I would, forgive him. And it probably took me a little longer to forgive. He's definitely better at it than me.
Yeah.
But I was not doing that to myself,
So thank you for repeating that. I just wanted our audience to hear that. What are you doing now? Now that you've gone through that, you're doing something, a process. What's your process to actually stay mentally healthy?
So it's taken a long time to learn things because there is a lot of different things you can do. And so for myself, I've stayed on that medicine. I've been on it for 11 plus years. I'm trying to do math right now.
Yeah.
And I know I cannot go off of it. And so I have accepted that. So starting off with the medicine, there is no shame in taking medicine.
Right.
Would I like to get to a point where I am taking more natural things to help with it? Yes. So currently, that's what I'm looking into and investigating, because for years I was in survival mode. And so I took that because it was okay. So now I'm looking at the type of foods that I eat and the things that are in my environment, because on another side note, I know there's a lot of relation with the gut health.
Yes.
And with brain health and mental illnesses. And it's taken me I'm actually just very new at it. So
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot about it, and I've already noticed a huge change. And someday I hope to work with my doctor to get me off of them. And if I don't, and I can't do it, and I haven't figured out, I'm fine. Because I am happy. And I feel one of the biggest changes I had to do is I had to get rid of people in my life that were not encouraging and uplifting. And that is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, because it involved getting rid of people in my life that were possibly family, close friends that I've had, for years and years. I've had to just cut them out. And I've had to change my environment. I've had to... the biggest thing, and I think it annoys certain people in my family the most, is that I've had to learn to let go of things. I have 4 children still living at home. The oldest is now 20 and the youngest is 13. And my husband is very busy with his work right now, which is super great and amazing. We're excited for it, but it's a hard time. And I've had to learn to let go things. And I have to have my house super neat and, all that. So I've had to learn to prioritize what's most important to me. And to me, it isn't a clean house, which my house is, I think it's clean. Right now, it's probably not, honestly, because I've been so busy lately. But it's my relationship with my family, with my kids. I feel my priority in life is to let my kids know that they're loved. And the only way that I can really show that, besides telling them, is to love myself. I have to give myself grace. I have to, when I get flustered, I have to stop what I'm doing and take a minute.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say, and I'm kind of writing down as you're saying, first, if you needed meds, you go to a doctor and you get your meds.
Yes, get help.
Get help. And we talk about the gut-brain axis. If whatever you're putting in your gut, it affects your brain.
Yes.
Goes up there. So the gut-brain axis, it's important to eat good stuff, not inflame your body with inflammation, food, and all of that. Then community is important. The people you have in your community, that is so important. Surround yourself by positive people, right? And I think it's most important is that you have prayer and you have God, which is your foundation.
Yes, I'm actually glad you brought that up, because that was the missing piece that I did not apply or understand as well. Because like I said, I'd gone to church for years. I'd done the therapy. I had been on medicine. But it wasn't until I really understood that I needed to call upon God and have him help me through this, and to have hope that things are going to get better, that the darkness is just for a season and there is light at the end of it for everyone.
And I love what you said, because there are people who just think like, yeah, there is God and He is our healer and He's going to heal us. But you're wise also to know that I need a good community. I need to put good stuff in my body. I need the medication also
Yes.
to help me because God created that.
Yes.
So you knew what you needed to help you. I love that. That's such a good takeaway for anybody who's listening to this. And I also love that you said, eventually I might go to natural stuff. But for now, I'm testing it out, and that's the right thing to do. You never go
Right.
off of something.
Yes, never.
Never.
No,
Never.
that's not safe,
Yeah.
especially with diagnosed depression.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely can see in times where seasonal depression or maybe environmental or, just things that happen in life make it worse.
Yeah.
And I've seen people in my life go through depression, but they don't actually clinically have it all the time like I do.
Yeah.
And it's just for a season, for them. And for me, it's been a little different because I have had it like every single day.
Yeah.
And there's another part of my story that actually leads to eating healthy foods. We'll talk about that at another time.
Okay.
But I do have a lot of diagnosed illnesses. That I'd love to share the story of those someday, but because of that,
we will.
Yeah, but because of that, I've had to take
Yeah.
care of my body more.
Yeah. But I want to ask you this. Do you feel happy now? Do you have times when you feel joy?
Oh yes, all the
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
I have a lot of, because I always call myself the simpleton, because I love to just sit and just be silly with my kids.
Yeah.
And I love to just go outside and just appreciate nature. I love to just go out for a walk and just enjoy the beautiful weather, which thankfully we're starting to have again. And just it seems so silly, or like a little kid, like how the wonder and amazement that they have. I'm trying to bring that back into my life. And I thought of before as it making me look a little like, oh, well, she needs to grow up. That's a little kid thing. I think it's amazing because there are so many fun little things in our lives
Yeah.
that are better focused upon
Yeah.
than all the negative and all the things that you're not doing right. Or,
Yeah.
we could sit here all day and bash ourselves. But why?
Why?
Why would we do
I
that?
love that, Missy. Yeah, look for little things. Be like the little kid. A lot of us, we're too adult at
Yes.
times. We're too adult. And we
Exactly.
can't relax and we can't let our hair down and
We
let
don't
go.
play.
We don't play.
We
I
don't
just-
have fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love that you said that. There's just so much different parts of your story we can dig into. But I'm going to have you back on the podcast. But
Sure.
is there anything else you want to share with our audience, or what's a takeaway for our audience today?
Our takeaway for the audience, I would say you are not alone.
Yeah.
It is very common what you're going through. You would be surprised if you actually start talking about it. You'll find people everywhere that are going through it or have gone through it at least once in their life. And one of the big things that I love to do is share my story. I usually do it on a one-on-one basis when somebody's going through something hard, and I feel if it would help them. I don't always share, but I've found now the more that I've been vocal about it, the more it's normalizing it. It is so common. You are not alone. You are totally worth it, and you are so loved. Don't ever forget that. And please, if you cannot get through it on your own and you're just not sure, like if it's ever going to end or how you're going to move on or what's the next step, talk to someone. Get help. You can talk to, until you find that right help, never stop fighting for yourself and for your happiness, because everybody can have it. It is not just for a certain few people. So I always just want to give everybody a big hug and just tell them how much they're loved, but it's virtual, so sending virtual hugs, I guess.
Thank you. You are strong. You are resilient. And I love how one person at a time, one day at a time, you are breaking the stigma and letting people know that this is normal.
Yes.
So thank you for doing that. Much appreciated. And it's so much more needed. So for leading the charge, I appreciate you. And we're definitely going to have you back on the podcast.
Thank you, Sally.
Yes. And with that, it's a wrap.